Let's cut across to our panelists this evening. I have with me Meera Chadda Borwankar, former police commissioner, Lalita Kumara Mangalam, former NCW chairperson, Dr. Kalpana Nagpal, ENT surgeon, Talishwe, advocate, Supreme Court. I want to immediately cut across to Ms. Borwankar. Ms. Borwankar, two very separate incidents, but the spotlight on both the Kolkata police as well as the Badlapur police. The Kolkata police, the various, misses that the police made has been detailed immaculately today by the Supreme Court as well. On the other hand, the Badlapur police made the parents of these two young girls wait for over 12 hours to even register an FIR.
So the first case is now all over the country, and the protests were definitely organic, and it has shocked the country, as now today's news about Badlapur. So my emphasis would be that we have adequate laws. Implementation is where we are failing. Today, the Supreme Court has appointed another committee to look into doctors' security. Now, do you think schools are less important? My emphasis would be, one, let's implement security SOPs at field level. And instead of being top heavy with too many committees and commissions, implementation should be emphasized, and 51 million cases pending in the courts. If we have trial of all cases of molestation, sexual harassment, rape of women, and the trial finishes within a year, and the accused are punished not with only 30% of conviction rate, which we have today in India, you will not have Badlapur and Kolkata if the accused are ascertained that they will be convicted within a year.
You talk about whether the accused will be convicted in a year. I'm going to get down to that in a short while from now, because what's appalling, viewers, today was also a day where one case saw the light of day 32 years after. Imagine a case which had happened in 1992 in Ajmer, and we're going to play those facts out in just a short while. Today, the POCSO court held the accused guilty. But Lalita Kumara Mangalam, I want to come down to you as well. What more, Lalita Kumara Mangalam, because one seems to be at their wits' end, because there's protests raging on, you've got committees after committees. It's not that you don't have laws. A capital punishment clearly hasn't proven to be a deterrent. We saw with what happened with Nirbhaya. What now needs to be done to actually ensure women are safe, not just at workplaces, but young girls, toddlers of 3 or 4 year old in schools?
Yeah, I agree with the former police commissioner. She's right. The laws are there. What is not there is accountability and a time-bound solution, a procedure. Both the courts and the police need to be held, or rather everybody who's supposed to be in charge of giving justice to any victim, they need to be held accountable. State governments, etc. The problem is, and that we've seen, whether it is with what happened today, yesterday in Badlapur, and today in Badlapur in Maharashtra, or in Kolkata, or earlier in Delhi with Nirbhaya, or, every day we hear of rape cases. The problem is that the implementation is so poor. The police, the lower-down police, that is the police right to the grassroots, seem almost not bothered about this. Even the public, we protest for a while, and then we move on to the next rape. It's almost become like that. Now, sometimes I'm at a loss of words. I don't know what to say. But we need to look at the entire system. We also need to look at the way we ourselves as a country think of women. Where is the respect? There is no respect for women. Women are not safe anywhere. At home, at workplaces, in public transport, in public spaces, apart from when they travel. Where are they safe? In bathrooms, in schools, where are they safe? There has to be a very concerted and very united movement across the board. We cannot anymore afford to just say that the government is responsible, or the police are responsible, or some minister or some chief minister must resign. Is that going to solve it? I know people will jump on my throat for me saying this, But quite frankly, what sort of men do we have in this country? What sort of sons and brothers and husbands, etc., etc., are we living with? Are we bringing up? Where is, when I was young, I studied in a Catholic school, but it has nothing to do with the religion of the school where you're studying. We were taught something called moral science. There is no value education anywhere in this country. It's all about marks. Students are, even at the student level, how many girls are harassed in school for their looks, for what they wear, for what they don't wear, etc., etc., etc. Women seem to have become like toys. No, use and throw, or say what you want with it, break it up. The brutality of violence against women is increasing. When Nirbhaya happened, the whole country was appalled at the sheer barbarism of it. Today with Kolkata, yes, people are appalled. But then next day we hear about something in UP, then we hear about something in Maharashtra, then maybe somewhere, something else in some other state. We seem to be getting, how do you say it? I mean, even our outrage seems to be just merely words. I'm very glad today that the Supreme Court has pulled up the West Bengal government and the laxity and the inefficiency, deliberate or not, of the West Bengal police. But the truth is that this is not just happening in West Bengal. I am not getting into the politics of it. Who should take responsibility in Bengal? Why wasn't the principal question? All of that the Supreme Court has done today. There's no point in my repeating it. But when you have 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds being raped, when it takes 32 years for 100 girls to get justice in a POXO court, most of those women are now grandmothers.
Exactly.
What justice?
You're right, ma'am, because you're very right.
Delayed, justice denied.
You're right, and we'll just give those. But you're right there. We're just going to give that fact sheet of that case. It was a case that happened in 1992. It had shook the nation's conscience at that point of time because 100 girls from a very affluent school in Ajmer were exploited. Some of them raped, and the men responsible for that, 6 of them were acquitted, were in fact convicted, I beg your pardon, today. And the women who've been witness in this case, some of them were 16, and I spoke to one of them who's a witness right now and has seen that whole conclusion of the case of 32 years, is a grandmother today. And that has been the snail's pace of justice. I want to bring in Talish Ray into this conversation. Talish Ray, the court today, the Supreme Court, scathing observations, and rightly so, when it came down to the, mishandling rather of the situation by the Kolkata police, the administration, the government, but also touched on a larger point, which was a committee, a task force, a 9-member task force, which should be put together especially for the safety of doctors at work. Do you think that's the right move?
So far as the Honorable Supreme Court and in their wisdom as they took this matter suo moto, I think I would like to point out a couple of things. First was the deep level of anguish and dissatisfaction that the Honorable judges expressed about the state in which things are there. And that comes out from the very, order. When you look at the order, it actually talks about how not just how procedural lapses have taken place, talks about the anguish in terms of the manner of graphic images that have been shared with disregard to the privacy of the victim that is involved. The court again and again talks about lack of institutional safety. In fact, that is a standout phase that is there. And in order to cover for that, it has not just appointed a high-level national task force, it has also given the mandate to the task force. It says that there must be an action plan, and that action plan must be under 2 heads. One is to prevent violence, especially gender-based violence, and the courts are very clear here when they're referring to medical professionals. They're referring to the cross spectrum across. They're quite, enlightened in terms of understanding that not everybody is a doctor. There's paramedical staff and infrastructure that is required with all the human resources that are within a medical institutional system. And then the second part of the action plan is about providing enforceable protocols for all those that work under medical services. What is actually more important here is the time period that has been provided. The courts pointed out that for such a task force, not just our various stakeholders that are at the highest level in terms of distinguished doctors themselves, but also various secretaries, including the Secretary of Health, has been made party to it, and that an interim report of this task force will be presented within 3 weeks, with a final report for 2 months, which is to give a sort of a timeline so that it doesn't keep pending. They also touched upon the fact that there are existing laws. It talks about, and it took the various state governments as well as the union government to task and ask them to file in an affidavit within a month's time to talk about things which involve safety of doctors and other medical professionals, including having CCTV on premises, having screening facilities for those that are entering, asking for the various mandates that have been given to organizations, including hospitals, under the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act of 2013, Section 19, and that will need to be presented to the court for the court to be able to look at that, and the court is going to hear the matter again within a short period of 2 days. But perhaps I think what is visible was the very first line that the Honorable Justices put in, saying how many more women must it take for something to be done about the situation, for talking about basic values that are enshrined in the Constitution of equality, of safety. And they were, in that sense, alluding to the chilling effect that has come in, which is what Lalita ma'am referred to in terms of when we look at even the outrage also feels not so outraged anymore. It is almost like case after case that comes in.
You're right. The face keeps changing, and we outrage, and then we forget, and then we start all over again. Nirbhaya turns to Abhaya, and the Shakti Mill compound survivor turns into the Spanish tourist who got raped in Jharkhand. And that's that. But I want to bring Dr. Kalpana Nagpal, ENT surgeon, into all of this. Kalpana Nagpal, I just want to quote from what the court said today. That practically stating the last straw was what happened, and the nation cannot wait for another rape and murder, what Talishri also touched on, to bring in safety laws for medical professionals and doctors. The sheer fact, Dr. Nagpal, that now our committee has been set up, a 9-member task force, is it somewhat reassuring for doctors like you now?
Not fully as yet. Well, first of all, other than being an ENT surgeon, I'm also the president and founder of Women's Association of Otolaryngologists of India, which consists of 2,000 members. And there are a lot of juniors and residents as part of my association. And it's not just me voicing, so there are 2,000 voices behind me. So, well, thanks to the Supreme Court for bringing up this national task force. But I feel they should be not just a 9-member team. They should have several state task forces under the national task force. And each state will have several other members and include psychiatrists and leaders of various women associations, because women association leaders would know what exactly women concerns are and day-to-day minor incidents and everything. So this task force should be certainly much bigger. And now, there's more fear other than outrage amongst the doctors, fear amongst women and also parents sending their children to colleges and hospitals, etc. Now, more than this, the fear should be actually amongst the rapists and criminals that are going around. Now, we have a lot of perverts, amongst us. There are a lot of people with various personality disorders. These have to be, come to the limelight. They're not screened. And so we have to accept that we have such people in the society. And that is why these things will keep on going. And in order to prevent them, we will have to have 100% safety norms. So we have to ensure safety protocols at every institution, company, school, college, anything. So 100% safety means in which we need to deploy, more police, more bouncers, and take responsibilities in terms of, whether you're a nursing head or whether you're principal of a school or you're director of a hospital, and ensure more duty rooms and ensure more security personnel and conduct mock drills, several mock drills every day. And, today the DGHS was saying there should be a code violet. so that, you can do this mock drill every day in the hospital also. And this is all very much required because, we don't want a single rape happening anymore. And whatever we have come to know is also just the tip of the iceberg. Believe me, there are many more rapes happening around.
Yeah, but this is just a reported number. You're right.
Yes, so it's just the tip of the iceberg. And that is why enhanced security is very much required. And so along with outrage, this fear is there. And this is going to be there for a long term. The reassurance will come in only when all the laws are strictly enforced. Why don't we follow Dubai or Qatar, where the punishment is very strict? They're hanged the next day. So why don't we have such law here? The law should be such that women can go around at any time of the day or night. So we have various women force working, even whether it's media or hospitals or anything. No, these cannot stop, right? There are a lot of anesthetists, a lot of gynecologists, a lot of people working for emergency, and similarly nursing shifts, etc. So this will continue. So enforcing law and punishment, and the punishment should never be delayed. Hanging or whatever be the punishment. In case of rape, of course, hanging or even removing the genitals, or strictly enforcing any other punishment in terms of like in case of molestation or domestic violence or any other violence. It should be within a short period, specified period. If it is rape, probably less than 4 days. Yes, preferably less than 24 hours, and any other violence within 1 month. So if the punishment is delayed, there will never be a fear amongst these criminals. So this is very much required, and ASAP.
All right, Ms. Barwankar, taking off from what the doctor said, India is a country where a rape happens every 17 minutes, and despite of that, and that's just reported rapes, the conviction rate is less than 27%, so it's appalling. Now, the doctor on the panel actually, where you go down and say that let's have really strict laws, let's look at Saudi, let's look at Iraq, whether it's chemical castration, hang them in 1 day, 1 day's time, also then has a flip side to it, because we saw that happen in multiple cases where you got the wrong person, or then the police goes into a hyperdrive to try and finish, or at least appear to finish investigation. So what's the answer? Because at least in India, we haven't seen capital punishment be the answer. We saw what happened with Nirbhaya, and after that, it's not that rape cases have come down, because there was capital punishment meted out.
So Dr. Nagpal's position of even justifying hanging or the very strong words which she has used only shows the desperation of the women of the country. But I must say, disappointed with the Supreme Court appointing another committee. I would have personally expected the Supreme Court to say that in India we have about 153 police constables per lakh of the population, while international standard is 220 constables. I would have expected Supreme Court to say that fill those 20% vacancies and bring Indian police at par with international norms, so that we can have proper security on the roads, and also we can provide high conviction rate to the society. I expected the Supreme Court also to say that as per the Law Commission report, 120th report, we should have 50 judges per million of population, while we have only 21. So in my opinion, we as government are taking very soft decisions of appointing committee after committee, instead of taking hard decision of bringing our judiciary and our police force, much flogged police force, which is working with less than 100 constables per lakh of the population. We are just appointing committees. So let's take some hard decision. And if a lady doctor is losing her patients, and a very well educated lady, which shows that if not in 1 day, 24 hours, 1 month, at least in a year we convict all these Nar-Bhakshi Danavs who are going around free from Badlapur to Kolkata.
But, Ms. Barwankar, you say that it's, that we need to increase our police force. They're working under a lot of pressure, but there's also a desperate need, and we've spoken about it so many times, but never really seen it happen, to sensitize our police force. Because if you look at each and every case, right from Nirbhaya to now, the spotlight has been on the police for mishandling it, or the politicization of police with what we call it. Either it's a delay in, getting the FIR down, or there are grave lapses right at the investigative level.
So investigation, an officer, yesterday I was talking to cyber crime unit of Mumbai.
Yeah.
An officer is investigating 80 cases per year. Now you think what kind of justice he or she can do to a case of investigation. So I am repeating, let's take hard decision of increasing the workforce, increasing the judiciary.
Yes.
Both.
All right. Okay. Lalita Kumaram Mangalam, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I agree with this. The other thing that I found when I was chairperson of the NCW, that we just do not have enough forensic services in this country. You have rapes and murders and all of this violence against women throughout the country. If you go to slightly more remote areas, not just the main metro cities and the 2-tier and 3-tier cities, forensics are extremely poorly available. There are no kits. There is not enough whatever material you need to get the forensics done quickly, etc. So it needs to be a comprehensive reform. The number of police have to increase. They have to be better sensitized. They have to be allowed to act independently and not always under political pressure or political threats, or whatever words one want to use here. They have to be trained better in forensics. There have to be forensics available immediately and quickly, because let's not also forget that medically a lot of proof is lost as forensic testing is delayed. All of these need to be taken into consideration. The Supreme Court has done a good job today, but I think it's just, the beginning. A lot more needs to be done. The system needs to be vastly improved. And the system includes both, people and equipment and training and all of that is necessary. Along with that, we also need to educate the public. We need to talk to schools. We need to talk to parents, etc., about how to demand and see that their children, that their families, that the women of their families or their to talk to industry, to talk everywhere about the need for accountability for women's, by women I mean across the board, all ages, whether it's old women or younger women who are working or children, etc. The safety of women, we can't just talk about women who are being raped. And I don't mean it in any way against any of the very, very unfortunate rape victims that, they seem to be sort of mushrooming all over the country. I'm saying this very frankly, that there needs to be a systemic change.
You're right.
And the way we think about women's safety, and the way that we train and talk to and tolerate many of the things that seem to happen in everyday life where women are constantly humiliated and questioned. This has to stop.
But you're right.
Accountability has to be fixed at every level in the whole system.
Well, Talish, we're taking off from what Lalita Kumaram Mangalam also said, because there needs to be a systematic change, and there needs to be a systematic change of mindsets as well. Because, let's just look at this, because what we do is we deify a Nirbhaya or an Abhaya in death, but where survivors are concerned, we completely ostracize them. And to give examples, you had the likes of a Bhavri Devi, Suzette Jordan, who broke ground by publicly coming out and speaking of what happened to them. What happened to them then? You ostracize them from society. Bhavri Devi still cannot enter her village and speak to people properly. And this was a case which happened all the way back in the 80s.
1997.
Yeah, 90s, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
And then you have Suzette Jordan, who openly came out and broke shackles and said, I don't want to be called the Park Street rape victim. And what happened to her? Constant abuse she faces day in and day out.
Yes, so we do have this thing where we try and push back women who go in from their narrative of being victims to survivors. And that pushback is actually very visible, because I was very interestingly watching the various news snippets that you were putting in right at the beginning, Preeti. And therefore, one can't take away not just from the various rape cases reported, but look at what the Hema Committee report has said. And look at the reaction that has come in from the Honorable Chief Minister. He said, we will consider the recommendations. Here's a justice who was appointed to look at film stars and film industry, women that work in film industry. There's been agitation, some very powerful women in cinema collective that came out from it. And look at exactly what happens there. There is, again, we shall see about that. So taking from what all the learned members have said prior, there is anger, but there's also the need for changing and breaking the shackle of patriarchy that exists at every level. It needs to start at the very base level, and at what is known as an early stage intervention. Start from the schools, start with the respect, look at the curriculum, make it mandatory as a part of it. When we look at schools today, we have mandatory environmental regulation, but at the same time, children are being taught a different lesson all over. And at that point, I also want to point a finger here, or put focus on the media that is being consumed. And I don't mean by news media, I'm talking about audiovisual media. I mean, look at the kind of content that is being created, wherein women are degraded, and it's almost normalized for it. So it is difficult for women to actually come out and say that it is creating a chilling effect. As professional women, as the court today recognized, medical professionals are extremely vulnerable. It didn't just take one particular instance. It went back and referred to the very horrific Aruna Shanbag case as well, which shocked the core of everybody. Every time you read that case, it has a triggering effect for most women. But the fact remains that every time that we are looking at changes, it has to be across board. It has to be at every level. There has to be a commitment, because let's recognize this. This is not violence against women. We have to recognize that we are in a state where there's a war against our women. We rage it against those that identify with spectrums outside of men. And I mean the gender of men. So it is a war that is there. And do we want to put our efforts on war footing? That remains to be seen. Because that war footing only comes on board when people come back to reclaim the streets, to protest, to have our doctors going through the indignity when we see them being, them coming out and saying, look, we are not going to do elective surgery. That hurts a doctor to say that they're all under an oath and they like to serve people. There is a certain element of vocation to that profession.
Right.
And yet it takes that drastic measure. So it is a war. And when are we going to have efforts on a war footing? That remains to be seen. And I think that's the urgency that the honorable justices today tried to capture when they gave in a line, when they expressed their anguish.
Well, let's hope, we build on that and not fall into an abyss till Nirbhaya or changed into Abhaya, and Abhaya changes into something else. Dr. Kalpana Nagpal, you wanted to come in, and, other question that I wanted to ask you. There was this, in 2019, the whole talk of the healthcare service personnel and clinical establishment bill, which would safeguard and make a law, for the safety of health professionals, of course. And at that point of time was put down by the Home Ministry, because can we actually make laws for each profession and the safety of each, of these professions? Do you think it's time now to do that? Maybe look for, and formulate a law when it comes down to health professionals in this country?
Oh, very much required. Violence against doctors has been going on time and again. There are a lot of emergency physicians and emergency doctors who are facing this on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes they get injured also. So, there are lots of stories from different hospitals. And this is very much required to be implemented, not just having the law in place. Yes. And also there must be different gates, gates of entry, whether to hostels or to the emergency or to the wards. There shouldn't be common entrances or common lifts for patients and doctors. It should be identity based. There are some hostels which have already implemented in the last 4 days, which I came to know through some other doctors, so that it's a face recognition system. That's how you're allowed to enter. No other third party is allowed. Even parents are not allowed. So such kind of strict measures are required, So the patients and attendants will have a different entry, and they should be far from the main critical areas where we treat, far from the ICUs and operation theaters. Yes, they should not be seen anywhere close by. And also the weapon check, the metal check, very strictly implemented at every place. It's very important. So these rules and laws may be in place, but they have to be enforced. It's high time.
I appreciate all four ladies for joining us. Thank you, because I think we've had a very constructive debate where at least we've tried to figure out on what's the answer, because we're in neck deep in an epidemic when it comes down to violence against women, sexual assault, rape, and at least there's acceptance of that. What's the way ahead? let's hope we bolster in from what the Supreme Court did today. I appreciate all four of you for joining us.